When a mechanic's wife is killed by unknown assailants, he turns towards revenge when an experimental computer chip is implanted inside his spine. The movie opens up in the year 2026 to a futuristic world where technology controls everything. An auto mechanic named Gray Trace is working on a car when his wife Asha returns home from work. Asha works for a company called Cobalt, one of the leading companies in the tech business, contributing to human-computer augmentation. Sometime later, Gray asks Asha to accompany him to a client's house as he makes a car drop-off. The two of them head out in Asha's self-driving car and drive towards the client's house. Asha is surprised to see that the client is a renowned tech genius named Aaron Keene. As Gray hands Aaron the keys to his now fixed car, he leads the couple into another room where he shows them his newest project, a small bug-like device called STEM that is capable of managing a human's motor functions. Soon, it is time for them to leave, and once again, Asha's self-driving car starts driving towards home. While the two of them are busy among themselves, their car takes a turn into Gray's old neighborhood. It's not long until Gray spots that the car is malfunctioning and alerts Asha. They try to gain back control of the car, but nothing helps stop the car until it reaches a tent city and crashes. Just before their car flips, Gray buckles Asha into her seat, but doesn't get the time to do the same for himself. The car flips and lands upside down. However, the two of them survive, and Asha calls out for Gray. By the time Gray gathers his bearings, a group of men who have their faces covered with masks pull Asha out of the car. One of the men named Fisk holds Asha at gunpoint while Gray is held back by his goons. Fisk shoots Asha before beating up Gray and shooting him in the spine. As they leave, Fisk grabs Gray's wedding ring. Not being able to move, Gray is forced to watch Asha bleed to death. Moments later, the police arrive at the scene and Gray is transported to the hospital where doctors perform surgery to save his life. 3 months later, Gray finds himself wheelchair-bound after becoming a quadriplegic. His mother, Pamela, stays with him while he learns how to operate his wheelchair. One morning, he accompanies his mother to the police station, where they meet with Detective Cortez. The detective tries to deflect answering Gray's questions about the perpetrators until she finally confesses that they have not been able to identify them. Frustrated, Gray returns home that night and gets one of the robotic arms installed in his house to administer his nightly medication multiple times until he overdoses. The next day, he wakes up in a hospital bed. To his surprise, he notices Aaron standing in his room. Aaron tells Gray that no tech in the world can bring Asha back, but he can help make his life easier by giving him the ability to walk again. He explains that although STEM has not yet been tested, it can help turn his life around. Since he has nothing left to lose, Gray agrees to become Aaron's guinea pig, and a few days later, STEM is installed in his spine. Once he wakes up from surgery, everyone, including Aaron himself, is surprised to see how well the chip is taking to Gray's body as he starts moving his limbs right away. Aaron makes Gray sign a confidentiality agreement to ensure that no one finds out about the chip and the progress that he has made. Over the next few weeks, Gray begins to train to regain his strength. Once his body fully adjusts to the foreign chip, Gray is able to go home. It's at this time that he hears an automated voice talking to him. He freaks out at first and thinks that he's hallucinating until the automated voice informs him that it is STEM. Although this makes him uncomfortable, he lets STEM show him the surveillance footage from the night that Asha was killed. STEM points out that the gun in Fisk's hand is implanted into it. When Gray replies that he does not recognize the man, STEM zooms into a tattoo of a symbol on one of the goon's hands. Using Gray's hand, STEM draws the symbol on a piece of paper and claims that it belongs to a man named Cirque, who serves in the Marine Corps. With all of the perpetrator's information in front of him, Gray immediately calls Detective Cortez. However, STEM reminds him that he is under contract and cannot tell anyone how he found the information. Gray realizes that STEM is right and decides to take matters into his own hands. He arrives at Cirque's house and breaks in. There, STEM instructs him to go through Cirque's search history, where Gray finds several mentions of a bar in his hometown known as Old Bones. Since there's no address or number given online, STEM thinks that it's suspicious, but Gray brushes it off and says that it's not relevant. He starts searching Cirque's house but hears his car in the driveway and rushes to hide in the living room. STEM advises him to hit Cirque while he's unaware, but Gray does not act fast enough and Cirque spots him. He backs Gray into a corner and asks him what he's doing there. Gray asks him the names of the men who were responsible for killing Asha. However, instead of answering him, Cirque backs him up into a corner and starts punching him. While Gray is getting beaten, Stem asks him to permit it to take over. Desperate, Gray does not think much of it, and all of a sudden his body moves on its own as he attacks Cirque and eventually kills him. Gray realizes that he has just committed his first murder and begins to feel sick. He throws up in the kitchen sink, and Stem takes this chance to remind him that he will have to clean up the evidence he has left behind. Once he gathers his bearings, Gray quickly cleans up the evidence and leaves. Sometime later, Gray meets with Aaron, who reveals that he has been tracking Stem and knows what has been happening. Gray argues back, saying that Aaron had never told him that Stem could talk. This catches Aaron by surprise, since he did not know that was possible as well. He orders Gray to not pursue anyone anymore. On the other hand, Detective Cortez goes to the morgue where a doctor has autopsied Cirque's body. He tells the detective that his body had several mechanisms inside that made him into a superhuman, along with a gun implanted into his arm. Hearing this, Detective Cortez heads back to the station where she goes over footage from the crime scene again. Since there was a shoe print left by Gray, the detective wanted to look into it and begin to track his movements. She notices him rolling around in his wheelchair near the crime scene and immediately gets suspicious. She decides to visit him and even checks his shoe, which Stem informs Gray about. That night, after the detective leaves, he goes to the Old Bones and comes across a man named Tolan, whom he deliberately provokes. When Tolan and his friends take Gray to the restroom so they can beat him up, Gray gives up control to Stem, who fights for him. He cuts up Tolan's face to get answers. Although Tolan refuses to answer any questions, Stem notices that they have a chip implanted as well that was manufactured by Cobalt, the same tech company that Asha worked in. At that moment, Aaron tries to shut down Stem, but Stem warns Gray about it and tells him to find a hacker named Jamie who can help hack into the system so Aaron can no longer control it. Sometime later, Fisk arrives at the bar where he goes through Tolan's last few memories and discovers that Gray is still alive. Meanwhile, with Stem losing functionality, Gray begins to lose his ability to walk again, but pushes himself to reach Jamie. Stem instructs Jamie to use a code to reboot the system. Unbeknownst to Gray, this code allows Stem to take over Gray's body. While Stem is rebooting, Fisk shows up at Jamie's apartment. When he finds Jamie, he points the gun at him, but Stem regains its functionality and allows Gray to get away. Back home, Gray lets his guard down and walks into his home, shocking his mother, who is preparing dinner for him. Gray tells Pamela that she cannot tell anyone about the chip. The next day, Detective Cortez visits Gray again since his wheelchair, which had been abandoned outside Old Bones, had been found. She thinks that it's too big of a coincidence that he was at the location of the murders. This is why she leaves a listening device behind. Knowing that he might get in trouble, Gray tells Stem that they should stop what they're doing or they will get caught. However, Stem reminds Gray that it no longer needs his approval to do anything and forces Gray to move out of the house to chase Fisk. Behind them, Detective Cortez, who had overheard the conversation Gray had with Stem, tails them. She continues following them until Stem detects her and instructs Gray on how to get rid of her. He hits another car, causing it to crash into the detective's car. Soon after, Gray reaches Fisk's home, where he holds him at gunpoint. Fisk confesses that they were ordered to kill Gray and that Asha was never their target. This does not sit well with him, and he taunts Fisk about brutally killing Cirque. Provoked, Fisk ambushes Gray and the two of them fight, but Stem is too powerful and it forces Gray to stab him to death. He notices Fisk's eyes shining, indicating that a camera has been planted inside. He takes the device and finds that Fisk was ordered to kill Gray by Aaron. Angry, Gray rushes to Aaron's house and threatens to kill him until Aaron ends up confessing that Stem had taken over his mind and was trying to control him. The orders to cause the accident and kill Asha had come from Stem, who now wanted a body that it could manipulate. Just then, Detective Cortez arrives at Aaron's house as well and tells Gray to drop the gun. Despite her threat to shoot, Gray ambushes the detective and injures her. Before he can kill the detective, he forcefully moves his arm and shoots himself. When Gray opens his eyes, he finds himself in a hospital bed with Asha by his side. However, this turns out to be a fantasy, as Gray is sent into a dreamlike state while Stem takes full control of his mind and body. At the end of the movie, Gray, who is still being controlled by Stem, shoots Detective Cortez dead and leaves Aaron's home as a deadly weapon being controlled by a computer chip. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel if you enjoyed the content, and share in the comments any movies you'd like us to recap.